DeBolt and my co-host,
Caleb Clark.
And we are here with episode 23 of our show called
Who's
Zoomin' In. It's so good to see your face. How are you?
It's good to see your face. I'm wonderful.
Please tell everyone, Mr. Clark, why we do this show.
Who's Zooming In was started because we miss our people. And we're pretty sure that you miss your people too. And we're pretty sure that a lot of them are the same people. So this is a great way for us to catch up with friends, meet and make new friends, and to find out about all of the cool, interesting things that everyone is doing during the
Because there are some cool, interesting things. What 3 things am I not allowed to talk about today?
Today, I don't want to talk about the rain. As we are recording this, we have had enough rain. And
I think we're in a tornado watch right now anyway, so we're not going to talk about it. Number 2.
The second thing, I don't want to get into talking about molten lava cake. I don't want to really talk about, it'll make me hungry, but also how it's made is very confusing to me.
All right, and number 3.
I don't want to talk about how Deborah Messing laughs at herself in every episode of Will and Grace. Just won't.
Do you know this about me, that it drives me crazy? Okay, we can't talk about it because I'll go.
Well, Deborah, we're coming for you.
We're coming for you. So today, I'm glad that I'm not introducing you to somebody new. You know this young lady.
Excited. Yeah, this is a new friend.
She is a very familiar face to theater lovers in Birmingham. She is a young person, Obvi. She's an artist, producer, teaching artist. She has done theater in New York City. She's done regional tours, and she's also a graduate of the Red Mountain Theater Company youth program. She is a founder. In 2008, she founded the organization called Songs for Sight, and she's going to talk about that a little bit. She is also a producer of a documentary series called Able, teaches Pilates and all kinds of other stuff too. But today she's on because we want her to talk about this new passion of hers. She's an inclusivity advocate. Alie B. Gorrie, join us on the screen. Woo, 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 woo. Yay! Thank you for joining us, friend.
It's so good to see y'all.
She's actually living in Birmingham now. You've been living here since about May, right? Yes, from New York City, just packed it up and came back home for a while.
I did indeed. I packed up for a 10-day trip in March, actually. I was doing some keynote work and working at the Human Rights New Works Theater Festival over at Red Mountain. And I was packing up to get back on the plane to New York, and my family said, no, it's not happening for you. And so I've just been here ever since.
Alie B was in the audience Friday night, March the 13th, when it was Terrific New Theater's last show.
I know this is going to be the last shot of theater I'm going to get for a very long time, and I need to be here. Wow, I just ouchie of theater. But
we had no idea. We thought it would be a couple weeks, right? We'd be back.
Yeah, everything that was saying, they're like, oh, it's okay. In May when Broadway comes back, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Hello.
All right. I told you that she has done some performing in New York and also regionally. And I saw you do this show. This is Bastard Jones, right?
Yes, she's such a lady in this picture. Of all the ones, I think this is really the most refined.
What are you holding in your hand? What is that you're holding in your hand?
Like a stick.
because you're fierce. And look at this other one.
That's a little more.
There she is.
Tell you what, there's the curls. There's the basket skirt. There's the
basket skirt.
The glamour.
How comfortable was the basket skirt?
The basket skirt and I had to have a few incident reports written. We had a hard time sealing it at the bottom, or the design team did. And so I kept on having these basket scratches up and down. And I would leave rehearsal and everyone was like, Alie, that does not look good. You need to tell the designer. And I was like, it's fine, guys. It looks really good from the audience.
And we also packed up and drove to see you in a
TYA tour of Seussical.
God, that was so much fun.
Yes, I love that show too. How
long were you on tour with that? A couple years.
Well, 8 months.
8 months. Okay.
When you're living out of a suitcase, it does feel like a couple of years. I felt like I was the only one in that show that I loved it so much, and I was like, another day to do Seussical, and everyone was like, and I loved it. It was just so fun, and I think when you know that you're a lot of kids' first experience in you carry that. You really take it seriously, and you treasure it. You live for that. So Anyway, love
Oh,
those.
you've been doing theater ever since you were this big, right?
Yes.
Always singing and dancing.
Third grade, center stage productions at Indian Springs.
Well, and I mentioned in your introduction that you founded an organization called Songs for Sight. This was, I think we said 2008, and you were a kid, like 14 or 15, right?
Yes, I was.
Why that organization?
Some of you might not know this, but I am legally blind. I have a vision impairment. I have never known what it's like to have 20/20 vision. Was born with an eye disease. When I was around 13, I went to an eye doctor at UAB where I had been receiving care and surgeries my whole life. But I went to a specialist who, for the first time, told me a list of things I could do as a person with low vision. Typically, doctors like to tell you all the things you can't do and all the side effects and all the things that are really hard. But she said, hey, I've got news for you. Like with this piece of technology, you can read faster. And with this piece of technology, you can use it like when you go to a restaurant and the menu's up on the wall, you can use a telescope and you can read the menu.
Wow.
Or with this piece of technology, you can, drive a car. And when she said that, I immediately just wept. There are these things called bioptic glasses. I'd show you them, but they're in the car. But they are specialized glasses. And at the time, Alabama had just passed a law that allowed bioptic driving. Not all states have those laws. I had 2 years of occupational therapy, and I had so many months where I couldn't even get behind a wheel when all my friends were getting their licenses and I was still in my passenger training. And it was frustrating, but I knew that there was a bigger goal. My whole life, doctors had said things I couldn't do. They told my parents, your daughter will be able to maybe walk around without bumping into furniture. Good luck. Take her home now. But they never really told me I couldn't do things. Like if I said I want to go do baseball, they let me do baseball and let me figure out for myself that I didn't like it. I always kind of did the things I was told I couldn't. They said you can't ride a bike. I rode a bike. They said you can't read. I read large print. All of these no's, but driving isn't something you can just like say, well, I'll show you. Like you actually have to test at the DMV, and you can't just be like, I'm going to get you. It's like a law.
And special equipment, that's really expensive, right?
Yes. Songs for Sight was started because the equipment in the occupational therapy that I used to drive isn't covered by insurance. It's often in low vision aid. I have a handful of low vision aids all over my house to help me do things, but low vision aids, it's not a white cane and it's not contacted glasses. So it's like, well, it's not a necessity. You can get by without it. And I'm like, sure you can, but do you want independence or do you want to depend on people your whole life? Nothing wrong with that. But if you can have independence, like, let's go. I was told by my doctor, not every kid has this access and not every kid gets this. And I, first of all, was like, wait, there are other kids? Like all I see in here are old people. And she said, yes, there are other kids. And so I wanted to create not only funding for kids like myself to be able to drive and, read faster and be more independent for college, but also for kids to have support groups. And they're really more just like social hangs where kids with low vision meet each other. Because unless you go to a school for the blind, you're on your own. And so I didn't know any other kids with low vision until I created Songs for Sight.
If you're 15, I mean, you're a kid. How do you even start an organization like that? How did you know how to do that?
I talked to my family, and my parents they're very plugged in the community. And so they said, okay, well, write UAB a letter. If this is something you want to do, like, let's get creative. What do you want to do? If you wanted to do a fundraiser, how do you want to raise funds? Like, are you going like team car wash or are you going like team concert? And so I said, well, I want to do a musical evening and I want it to have performances, but I also want the audience to be like, have a low vision simulation situation going. So they said, okay, well, if you start an organization, oftentimes you have like either a cabinet or a board. So I want you to think about your board. And so then I put together a board of teenagers and then a board of adults. It really taught me how to very young start planning and learning about the nonprofit world, grants and all. I mean, so many different things, right?
Sure. And it prepared you very well for this producing project.
So glad you
tell us about that.
Songs for Sight absolutely sowed the seeds. Able is a documentary series that I produced and created with a dear friend. Able highlights disabled artists in theater, film, TV who have disabilities. It highlights their experiences, some of the obstacles that they face and how they've had to pave the way in the industry as often the only disabled person ever in a cast, in a space. And it just gives folks a glimpse into their experience. All the episodes, there's 8. They're all documentary Silent Spirit, but they're really interviews. It's casual, it's conversational. We want talking about disability to not seem like such a no-no. Think about it. When you're a little kid, your mom's like, don't look, don't stare, and so we're told that disability is something that we can't really connect with. And so we wanted to create Able because we want people to understand disability and learn to unpack it.
Right.
And
What's
so,
the percentage of our population that is disabled?
25% of our population is disabled. And then listen to this statistic. So in Hollywood, 95% of roles that are written as disabled are played by non-disabled people. In theater, only 1% of union artists who have disabilities are represented on Broadway each year, like 1%. And I said that was like doubled from last year. So I was like, oh, I guess last year was 0%.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
it's
gosh.
wild to think about those stats and to think that, and again, we're all learning and we're all growing, but to realize that you don't just get to put on a disability. It's not like a wig. I mean, think of the plays and the movies and the TV shows where you do see disability. It's often the same storylines over and over again. It's often like the character that is the underdog. And then at the very end, everyone's lifting them up and saying, good job, son. Like you did it despite your disability, which I hate that. I have a lot of friends who are actors who are little people and they have dwarfism and they're like, can I just play like a chef or a teacher? Like, why do I always have to play the gnome? Or like the superhero, like just because they have a disability, suddenly they have a superpower too. They can't just be
just play a character, the love interest, the next door neighbor. Yeah.
I mean, fun friend. We created the series because we just saw so many gaps in the theater and the entertainment industry where disability, when it was being talked about, it was not in a very empowered lens, but it also just wasn't really being talked about much at all. So we wanted to fill some of those gaps. A dear friend of mine, she has a brother who is nonverbal and he has CP and and autism. The whole inspiration for it came because we were at a show together and she said, oh my God, I'd never seen my brother and my family's dynamic represented until this. She was 28 and that was so empowering. And this is also a friend that I've never seen just like crying. I mean, woo. Representation is so powerful. When we go to the theater, we see mirrors into our own experience and windows into other people's, and being able to have
that's a great,
experiences or what we want to create. I'm sure we've all seen a show and been like, that's me, and disabled people can't say that.
Since you've been home, I think you're back in school getting your master's in arts in medicine at UAB, right? Plus you're working at Brassfield and Gorrie.
Yes.
You're teaching Pilates at Aero Joe. You're filling your days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about how many things Birmingham gained when Alie B came back? Like, but really, I mean, Pilates instructor plus inclusivity training plus all of these other things you're doing. It's like 12 people moved to Birmingham.
That's very kind.
The passion and the way you talk about it certainly leads us well into what it is you want to turn your life into. Tell us how this ability to recognize a deficiency in the theater world or in a business world or in your organization, whatever it might be, how do you address that? How did you decide?
So once I began working on Able and was really connected in the disability arts community, after I really plugged in and learned about disability history and disability justice and culture, I realized that why do two people know all of this? Like, why is this so misunderstood? I knew that I had to help other folks. I had already begun working with regional theaters on their own disability inclusion efforts, because once I learned sort of where the gaps were, I wanted to help fill them. I said, okay, well, I am literally a person with low vision, a disabled person. I love nothing more than to come help you. And at the time it was like, I give myself for $0 because I truly just wanted to be there and be able to fix some of these issues.
Would you just go to the theater, or would you,
go to the office, go to a meeting, go to the theater, go to rehearsal and watch?
Answer questions? Or did you have a talk prepared, or how did that even?
It sort of started by little like one-off experiences. Like folks would say, okay, well, how do I make my auditions more accessible? It was very like Q&A based at the very beginning. The thing about this is we can't see it as only affecting one part of your organization. Being inclusive isn't reserved for patron services. Being inclusive isn't reserved for HR. Being inclusive isn't reserved for one role. Everyone in the organization has to learn how to champion this in a way that fits in their scope of practice. So I learned that, what we need to be working on is crafting strategic plans, because every organization has a strategic plan for their business. But have a strategic plan for how to make sure that 1/4 of their business is coming in. If 1/4 of people has a disability, it turned into creating disability inclusion strategic plans with organizations. And so that's the bulk of what I do. And, we can just talk about one thing again. We can just talk about your rehearsal process. If you want to do like the Deaf West Big River, and you want to have deaf artists in your show, sure, I can help you with that. But what I would so much rather do is do like an accessibility audit and go through all of the factors of like, here's where your gaps are. Let's talk about long-term planning. I'm not saying, all right, well, this year you're going to fix it. It doesn't look like that. And I really do recognize it. So that's part of what I do, help folks in their planning, but then also getting to lead workshops and keynotes. And
okay.
That's one of my favorite things is getting to train folks too, because ultimately my job is to not have a job. Like it is to help folks understand how to weave this into the framework of their organization so that they don't have to. They're just inclusive, and that's like their go-to.
Some people they don't even know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
What words should I use? How do I address this? Yeah.
Disability 101 is the most common workshop I'm asked to give. And, a lot of people with disabilities hate doing that because they're like, I'm so tired of educating, but I actually love it because it's so fun to facilitate those aha moments and see people be like, oh, I see why the term special needs might be, I don't know, there might be a better word for that. Or, oh, I get it. Like there's two different, models of disability that I talk about. And then when we talk about how the person with the disability isn't the issue, it's that our society is the issue because it wasn't designed for disabled people. Everyone's like, so I love getting to facilitate those ahas. And so it can be as simple as a disability 101 training. Right. It can be a disability etiquette training. It can be a webinar on how to create, a 5-year strategic plan. It can be, it's so many different things, or it can be literally creating the plan for the organization /with, because it's got to be everyone on deck. So it can look really different, and or it could be like, hey, come speak to us on how you learn to drive a car, and that's fine too. So it can be a healthy mix. And I always say though, this is one thing with speaking, a lot of folks are like, oh, we want to come hear you like inspire people. And in the disability community, there's this term called inspiration porn, where it's great, but if it's just a disabled person, like, and then all of a sudden non-disabled people are like, oh man, that made me feel so good about myself. Like, and it's like, oh, that's not good. So I always say, I'm happy to talk about inspiring your folks to take action. I'm not here to just be like, that's sweet. But like, if there's no action from the inspiration, then it's just kind of dead energy. And like, what are your people going to do in response to that? So I always kind of clap back subtly and say, let's talk about linking inspiration and action, and then we can sign the form.
How did you get to be so smart?
I have really awesome mentors and friends, and I like to read books, and I don't ever like.
I'm not kidding. I'm listening to you talk about this, and I thought she's making me understand something that I didn't even realize I didn't understand.
You don't.
Does that make sense?
When we're talking about this stuff, is once you know something, you can't unknow it. And so then you just feel compelled to share it because it's there now. So
you've done talks and keynote speaking. What sort of organizations besides theaters have you been asked to talk to or with?
Yeah, absolutely. A handful of universities, some companies that are pretty big, like Deloitte, good old Charter/Spectrum. On a project with Lucky here in town, a handful of other organizations in New York, education organizations talking about disability, because special education and just disability education and mainstream, also organizations that foster mentoring and organizations like that. So it's really across the board. How
do they find you?
They can go to aliebgorrie.com, and I have a little inclusion consulting tab. Head on there. Oh, here's one of my favorites though. A museum in New York called Poster House. It's this amazing. I just can't wait to go back now that we're working together. But that's the best part of this work, is you can work with an educator for 1 hour, and then that night you're talking to a museum, and then the next day it's an aquarium, and then the next day it's a guy on a construction site.
And you can do it from the spot you're sitting in right now.
Right here. I think this pandemic has made so many things more accessible, which is a win for disabled people, but also just for businesses and for us to have these kinds of talks safely and be able to stay connected. But it has been really awesome. I was giving a keynote for a group in California, and yes, there was a time difference, but guess what? You put on your best dress and your blazer and poop, all of a sudden you're in California. Get a nice virtual background going, and dang.
This year has been so difficult for everybody, but there's so much, if one good thing has come out of this, and there are certainly more than just this one, but I think it's forced us to really walk in other people's shoes.
Yes.
To understand what other people are going through, to force ourselves to learn new vocabulary, it's been so great.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because this year has brought a lot, this past more than a year now, up to the forefront, and we've all had to learn to be better listeners, better allies, to consider the perspectives of other people that maybe we've never considered before, because we haven't been forced to sit with ourselves this long.
Right.
In the way we think. It's been especially interesting, I think, for people with disabilities, because in a very tiny way, this pandemic has given their perspective to people who aren't disabled. So for example, I always talk about people with disabilities don't have the luxury of spontaneity in their lives. Like when I go to the airport, I can't read the gates. I can't necessarily see how to find my way. It's a huge space. There's tons of people. My vision is just going nuts when I'm in the airport. So on my ticket, I have to ask for accessibility. Someone meets me at the door, then they take me through the line, then they put me on a golf cart, then I go to my gate. And it's like this whole thing that I have to plan and make sure, okay, is my accessibility person there? Okay, there always has to be something. And same thing when I land. Or, my friends who live in Birmingham who have low vision, but they don't qualify for driving. Well, guess what? If they want to go out to dinner, they can't just go. They don't just get that choice, right? Or, if my friends who are deaf in New York and they want to audition for something, they don't have the luxury of picking whatever time they want on the Equity website. They have to go when there's a 30-minute chunk for an interpreter to be there. They don't get that choice. Think about it. When we need something, we go to the Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
You don't even think. This pandemic, we've had to stop and think before we do things like, I can't go there. That's not an accessible place for me to go to.
And we have to plan. We got to pack our masks and take our
mask. I've got to pack my double mask, and I gotta, there's too many people, or I've got to call and see if anyone's been exposed, or we just have to take more steps. I think it's important to think, guess who else has to do that, and think, this isn't just a me thing. This actually is what most people with disabilities experience every day. So I think this pandemic this year has given us time to really consider others in a way that we just haven't had the time and space for. We're in such a go world, and we've had to.
I think this year has also given us a chance to look at what our life experience has been and say, what is my skill set? What am I as an artist? And then let that define you, as opposed to saying, I'm an actor and this is all I do. I think you were talking about, you're talking to a guy on a construction site. You're not all of a sudden not an artist because you're working with a construction crew. Right. All of your experience as an artist informs that work.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think artists are so quick to lose their identities and feel broken in this time. And I've seen it. We've all felt it. But I think we need to take that reframe and say, okay, so for this time, my skills that I've cultivated and learned as an artist are not being used on a stage. But the skills of being able to connect, be able to collaborate, be able to empathize, and get clear ideas across to people, like we have to do as actors, like that, it doesn't matter where you are.
I think you might have found your true calling, my friend.
I love it. I feel it too.
Oh my goodness. The passion you have when you speak about this, and how I love what you said earlier, how you do what you do so you hope that you don't have to do it anymore, that it just becomes the way we live, right? Yeah. And that we don't need inclusivity training, it's just
it's in the fabric of everything that you do.
Yeah.
Good for you, young lady. I'm so glad you just decided to join us today. I'm glad everybody gets to meet you and learn a little bit about this world.
Well, Caleb has me really, everyone in Birmingham has me thinking, well, maybe I'll stay a little longer. So
that's so wonderful.
We would love it. You could do you could do your inclusivity training and consulting, and you can still do theater at night.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do it all. I'm so glad you were here with us today. So what an honor that you chose to spend some time in the Zoom room. Woo, woo, woo.
Pleasure.
So we want to wrap this up today by asking you our 10 questions to find out some very serious things about Alie B. Gorrie.
These are important things we need to know.
We need to know.
Right.
Like question number 1. What is your favorite dessert?
Jenny's ice cream Texas sheet cake flavor.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
I die. Any ice cream with chunks in it. Gotta have chunks. Like Cookie Two-Step, Bluebell, excellent. But like Jenny's Texas sheet cake with the chunks.
Question number 2. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs.
Dogs. If you go to my TikTok, you'll see this is all dog video.
Question number 3. Do you still make a wish when you blow out your birthday candles?
Yeah, still, I will never not make a wish.
Yeah, continue, please, forever and ever.
Not the same.
Question number 4. If you didn't live in Alabama, where?
Either the Upper West Side, because I always said I wanted to be like one of the grandmothers with their little cart at the grocery store. Like I was like, I'm gonna live in New York until I got the granny cart. Or if I didn't have a theater passion and I was just content to be like a porch girl the rest of my life, I would live in Cashiers, North Carolina. I think it's the most beautiful place in the world.
Question number 5. If you could wear only one color for the rest of your life, what would that color be?
Navy, hands down. Like half my closet is navy.
Sometimes I have trouble discerning between navy and black.
Oh,
Like
I don't.
do it side by side, and yeah.
So many people are like, Alie, do you realize that's navy and black? And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Question number 6.
Mhm.
What did you collect as a child?
Playbills and cast albums. I was at my parents the other day and I was like, oh my God, like Dream Girls, like Pub Boys and Dinettes. Like what 9-year-old is just like jumping out to like Pub Boys and Dinettes? I don't know. Random. So, and also playbills. I've had playbills since my parents like took me to the Music Man at Summerfest when I was in kindergarten. And I've collected all the playbills, or as I used to call them, the programs, or the old ladies call them the programs.
The program.
The programs.
The program.
Playbills and programs.
Question number 7. Are you related to anybody famous? And if so, who?
Literally 0 famous people, but I think my dad's pretty cool. So he's famous to me.
He's famous to a lot of people, actually.
Really?
I love
him.
him.
He's famous all over the country.
Okay, question number 8. Sweet or salty?
Both. Both, because I like chocolate chip cookies with sea salt, and I like the pretzels that have the peanut butter in them.
You're salty.
You're salty. You're just
a sweet horse. No.
Question number 9. If the world opened up tomorrow and all the theaters were opening and everybody was doing shows, and you went running out to buy a ticket, would you buy a ticket to see a musical or a straight play?
First a musical, but a straight play for dessert.
Yes.
Sweet and salty dessert. If the theater's coming back, like I'm gonna go hard. I'm not just gonna see one show. It's gonna be like.
Last one, most important one. Question number 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a total snooze and 10 being a bag of laughs, how funny are you?
Bag of laughs.
Isn't that your name? Isn't it Alie B. Gorrie?
That's what the B is for.
Bag of laughs, Gorrie. I tell you what, it's just a gay old time over here. A bag of laughs.
So I'm giving you a 10. Kayla's giving you a 10.
I would never want to give a number, but can't hear bag of laughs and not go with it.
I think everybody would agree.
So that's it. That's Alie B. Gorrie, everybody. There she is. A bright, very bright future. Every time I talk to a young person like you, I think our world is in such good hands.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Thank you for joining us. Wave at the audience. Goodbye, everybody.
I love your way.